Signalman is a classic ghost story written by Charles Dickens in 1866. Set against the backdrop of the Victorian railway system, it blends elements of mystery, supernatural suspense, and psychological tension. The story begins when a narrator meets a lonely signalman working in a dark, isolated railway cutting. The signalman reveals that he is haunted by visions of a ghostly figure that always appears before a tragic accident occurs on the railway line. Each appearance of the figure is followed by disaster, leaving the signalman in a state of fear and torment. Through this chilling tale, Dickens explores themes of fate, fear, human isolation, and the supernatural. The railway, once a symbol of modern progress, becomes the setting for dread and uncertainty. The story's climax reveals a tragic irony. The ghost's warnings were real, but the signalman himself becomes the final victim. In the heart of the Victorian age, when the railway was celebrated as a symbol of progress and modern power, there were also places hidden away from the joy of civilization. Isolated cuttings, deep tunnels carved into the rock, and narrow tracks running like veins through the earth, these were lonely places, often dark, damp, and filled with a strange atmosphere. It is in such a setting that Charles Dickens unfolds one of his most chilling ghost stories, The Signalman. The tale begins with a traveler, the narrator, wandering near a deep railway cutting. The steep walls rise on either side, silent and oppressive. A red warning light glows dimly, like an unblinking eye staring into the mist. Beneath the rock walls, standing by the track, is a solitary figure, the signalman. The traveler calls down, his voice echoing strangely, "Halloa, below there." The reaction of the signalman is unsettling. Instead of a simple reply, the man starts with alarm, staring upward as though the words carried some dreadful meaning. The look on his face is not of curiosity, but of fear. The narrator descends the narrow path into the deep cutting. At once, the atmosphere changes. The sunlight fades, the air grows heavier, and the place feels remote, cut off from the world above. The signalman greets him politely, yet there is something grave in his expression. His manner is careful, as though he carries a burden he cannot share. The signal box itself, a small hut beside the line, adds to the mood. Inside, the faint glow of an oil lamp reveals levers, instruments, and the ever-watching red light by the tunnel mouth. The silence is broken only by the distant hum of wires, the soft tick of a clock, and the occasional thunder of a passing train. For the signalman, this is not merely a place of work, it is a prison of solitude. At first, the conversation is ordinary, but soon the narrator senses something unusual. The man is intelligent, well-educated, yet strangely withdrawn. His eyes shift often toward the tunnel, as though expecting to see something emerge from the darkness. There is an unease in him that no ordinary duty could explain. When the narrator returns a second time, the signalman begins to open his heart. With great hesitation, he reveals the secret that torments him. He has seen a figure, not a living man, but a spectral presence, a ghostly figure that appears at the mouth of the tunnel, always standing in the same spot. The figure waves its arm, a gesture of warning, but no voice is heard. Its face is blurred, its outline dim, yet its presence is real enough to fill the signalman with dread. The first time it appeared, the signalman was shaken to his core. He had never seen such a vision before. Soon afterward, there was a terrible accident. A train, speeding through the cutting, left the rails. Metal screamed against stone, carriages splintered, and the cries of the wounded filled the night. Lives were lost, families destroyed. Only after the accident did the signalman realize that the ghost's warning had been true. The second time, the apparition returned. Once again, It stood at the tunnel mouth, arm raised in warning. The signalman felt the same dread, the same helpless fear. Days later, a young woman traveling on a passing train was suddenly struck down, her life ending without warning. Again, the ghost had signaled a disaster that no man could prevent. Now, the signalman confesses, the figure has appeared a third time. But this time, he does not yet know what calamity it foretells. He lives in constant fear, waiting for the next disaster, powerless to stop it. Every flicker of the red light, every ring of the bell in his signal box, fills him with terror. The narrator listens with growing unease. On one hand, he wonders if the man is merely suffering from the strain of solitude, a mind troubled by endless nights in a desolate place. But on the other hand, the sincerity of the signalman's voice, the conviction in his eyes, cannot be ignored. The traveler tries to offer comfort. He promises to return again, to bring companionship, to help ease the burden of the man's thoughts. The signalman seems somewhat relieved, yet the shadow of fear does not leave his face. When the narrator departs, the memory of the lonely figure lingers. The deep cutting, the ever-glowing red light, the ghostly story, all weigh heavily upon his mind. He wonders if perhaps the man is indeed cursed, chosen to witness tragedies before they strike, yet powerless to change them. The next day, the narrator returns. As he approaches the cutting, he senses something is wrong. A group of railway workers is gathered near the tunnel. Their faces are grim, their voices hushed. With a sinking heart, the narrator rushes forward. The signalman lies still beside the rails. He has been struck down by a passing train. His life has ended in the very place where he lived in fear. The narrator is overcome with shock and sorrow. Then comes the chilling revelation. The driver of the train explains what happened. As the train approached, the driver saw the signalman standing motionless on the track. He waved, he shouted, he tried desperately to warn him. His arm raised in exactly the same gesture the ghost had used, but the signalman did not move. He seemed frozen, as though trapped by an unseen power. And in the next moment, the train struck him down. The narrator realizes the terrible irony. The ghost's warnings had always been true. They were not madness, not imagination, but messages of fate. And yet, the final warning was not to save others, but to foretell the signalman's own death. Thus ends the story in darkness and tragedy. The railway, that great symbol of human progress, becomes here a place of doom, where the living and the supernatural meet in dreadful silence. Through the signal, man, Charles Dickens reminds us of fragile line between reality and the unknown, between duty and despair, between progress and peril. The lonely figure of the signalman remains forever in memory. A man cursed to see disaster before it came, yet unable to save even himself.